Salutations, friends of small ball. Welcome. We are back. Here we are on this fine, snow filled Friday evening. Welcome back to small ball. Okay, so here's the deal. First, very important, must notify the world that we are live, or else how would they know to come and tune into this wonderful stream? So I will do such a thing at this moment. And as I do, I have to say a couple of things. Number one, wait, 1 second. We are live. Okay. Lovely. Now, here's the deal. Okay. Some of you, and first of all, I would anticipate a lot of you listening to me speak right now are doing so at a time that is not right now for me. What I mean by that was a very haphazard way of saying what I'm trying to say. What I am trying to say is I'm sure a lot of you are watching this as the recording after the fact because I did not really announce our return, so I'm not anticipating a huge live audience, but hopefully a lot of you are watching this after the fact, the post stream recording or whatever the case may be. You are hearing me speak right now, and so here's what I have to say. I have some good news and some bad news, okay? And it's not really news. It's like a good thing and a bad thing. Here we go. I'm going to start with the good. And a lot of you, hopefully, are new viewers to the show. I'm hoping to get, as 2022 rolls on, we get into the next year of small ball. This is essentially year 3, and I'll get to that in a second. Hopefully, a lot of you are new viewers, and I'm sure a lot of you are longtime viewers and listeners of the show, but hopefully a lot of you are not. And so a lot of this might be familiar and some of it might not, but here we go. Anyway, and also I must say, in looking back at past shows, I've noticed that my intros are long. Okay, I understand this and I apologize. I know, and I keep having to remind myself they don't care. They don't want to hear what's going on with you and all these little details about the show. Just go. Just do it. Just get into the show. I get it. Okay, I'm sorry. My bad. But today, it's our return, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about that's not necessarily baseball-oriented per se. So I am going to talk. Bear with me a couple minutes. I have some things I want to say, and I will leave some other logistical things for the end of the show because I do have some very exciting announcements. And I don't know if announcement is the right word because not a lot of it's finalized yet, and we'll get there. But hang around for the end of the show because I do have some things I want to discuss and make you aware of. Before I get into baseball related things today, I want to give you good and bad. Here's the good first. And on a more serious note, I really need to thank all of you, my viewers, for the support. And this is year 3 of small ball. Okay, small ball started January of 2020. And it's crazy to look back 2 years later and see how far the show has come and what how I have developed as a entertainer over those 2 years. And we're embarking on year 3. So the good news is thank you. I really need to say, and I said this the first time I ever did a show. This was like 2 minutes into the first ever small ball show. I said something to the effect of, if I can make one person's day better by doing small ball, then I've accomplished my goal. And that remains to be true and something that I believe. And so when I say thank you for the support and the viewership and all that, obviously you might be like, well, the viewership hasn't really been picking up. Small ball's been kind of up and down over the last 12 months or so, whatever the case. And yes, that is true. But I feel personally like I have succeeded in my task on numerous occasions of putting out a product that people can enjoy and are enjoying and have enjoyed, and I'm proud of that. So, And none of that would be possible without you guys and girls, obviously. So I thank you very much for the support, for the viewership. And I really think this is going to be a great 2022 for small ball for various reasons that I will mention at the end of the show. So here's the bad news, right? So good news, again, thank you. And I think small ball has been a great experience for me personally. I think it's made me a better entertainer. It's made me a better person. And I don't want to sound dramatic, right? I mean, that might sound a little bit over the top, but it's true. I really believe that to be true. And I'm excited for what's to come. That's the good news. Here's the bad news. So we had 2020, 2021, and now here's 2022. 2021, I mean, we gotta kind of just call a spade here, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. 2021 in the world of small ball was kind of a disaster. Okay, it was for a lot of people, myself included, obviously a very topsy-turvy year, and small ball is not excluded from that, right? So there was a lot going on, and it was so I started college this past calendar year, and that obviously made the show more difficult. I thought I was going to be able to concentrate on the show more being in college, but I was wrong about that. And I think I finally figured out a way to fit it in well. And I do think I am able to concentrate on it more, but I wasn't really approaching it in the right way. Again, I'm rambling too much. I apologize. But I want to apologize sincerely for I mean, again, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, a pathetic product that I put out in 2021, which was small ball. I was very disappointed looking back in the product that we put out because we had a great 2020, and 2020 exceeded my expectations, shattered my expectations, right? I expected to do the show and like just talk by myself and have nobody listening, and that was not the case. We had a vibrant 2020. It was great. We did the trivia shows, we had guests, we had a lot of cool stuff, and I was excited to build on that in 2021, and it just really did not come to fruition in the way that I had hoped. And I am sincerely sorry for that because I owe you guys a better product, and I'm confident that 2022 will be as such. Okay. So that's the good and the bad. Now that I've gotten all that out of the way, welcome back to small ball. Okay, I'm not going to go into the whole I'm so excited to be back and I've missed the show and it's been so long, blah, 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 blah. You've heard that many, many times because unfortunately, sort of in the same vein, we have had a lot of these long layoffs, I've noticed, in going back. I always go back, I look at the streams, sort of figure out what to improve on and what have you. And I noticed, and this might be obvious to you guys, but I realized that we've had a lot of these long layoffs, and I am sorry about that. It's there's no excuse. It's my bad. So I'm not going to waste time going into I'm so excited to be back and welcome back and blah 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 blah. Okay, even though I already have for like 8 minutes, so I guess I'm sort of contradicting myself a little bit there. But I'm not going to spend any more time on it. I hope. Maybe I will. I don't know. Here we go. Baseball. Again, more logistical stuff at the end of the show. Today's going to be a shorter show. I only have 2 kind of short segments, but what I want to start with is sort of an opinional take, and then afterwards we're going to do one of those fun segments that you guys and girls love so much. And we're going to do a lot of that kind of stuff, certainly during the lockout, right, when there's a dearth of stuff to talk about, and just in general because they're fun, and there's the word fun in that term, fun segments, so you can kind of see how that could be enjoyable for me. And you guys love when I do those fun, kind of top 10s, top 5s, that sort of stuff. We will have that later in the show. Oh man, I'm tired, man. It's been a while, and I'm not really back. I'm a little rusty. I'm feeling it. But here we go again. I'm at minute 9, and I still haven't talked baseball, so I'm not really. New Year's resolution for me, maybe small ball wise, stop talking so much. Right? I mean, it's a talk show, and I'm the only one on it, so it's hard for me to talk less. But you know what I'm saying. I think we need more baseball. We don't need all this logistical stuff. Anyway, here we go. 3 teams and 3 teams. 3 teams that I like, 3 teams that I don't. The lockout is unfortunately upon us, but the 2022 season will almost certainly be on the horizon at some point. So Here's three teams that I think are overvalued and three teams that I think are undervalued to start our 2022 small ball. And I have a full power rankings laid out. We'll get to more of that later next week. Three teams I like, three teams I don't. Here we go. Number one team that I like a lot, and this is a popular one. A lot of people are saying this, so I don't know how undervalued they really are. But the Miami Marlins, watch out for the Miami Marlins. Okay, so they made the playoffs in 2020, surprisingly to everybody. And the additions that they've made to this point in the offseason, in my opinion, by far the best of any team. Okay, so I did not like when they lost Chad Wallach, their catcher, who led them, in my opinion, to the playoffs in 2020. And unfortunately, they lost Starling Marte as well to the Mets, which is a huge hit. I think that he is a tremendous player, but he had a down year. Unfortunately, he had some tragedy early in the offseason, which we don't need to get into. But they lose him, but he wasn't really producing to the level that he normally is. So it's not as big of a loss from where they were last year, if that makes sense. And when they lost Chad Wallach, the catcher, I thought he was one of the more underrated catchers in the league, especially with the way he managed the pitching staff. And this is a very young, talented, but young pitching staff that has shown signs of being really, really good, but not yet. I think this is the year that that happens and comes to fruition. And a large part of that is the addition of Jacob Stallings. I think that is a terrific pickup for the Marlins. I think he manages a pitching staff very, very well and is an outstanding defensive catcher. And he can swing the stick a little bit too. But the addition of Luzardo, Jesus Luzardo, into a mix already of all those arms that they have with Alcantara and Sixto Sanchez and Edward Cabrera, those are literally four like top line prospect arms with now stuff. Bring in Jacob Stallings, bring in Avisail Garcia, more veteran leadership, and a tremendously underrated bat in Avisail Garcia, who does, first of all, runs the bases. I know you guys are tired of hearing about all this intangible stuff, but one of the best base runners in Major League Baseball, Avisail Garcia, and a tremendously underrated offensive player overall. Pair that with, and again, this is a very young roster, right? And young rosters, it's hard to, in a lot of cases, figure out when they are going to become, when they're going to blossom, right? That's kind of the whole question. But what helps them to do so is a experienced, talented, good manager. More on this in a second, but Don Mattingly is the exact right man for this job. With this young pitching staff, young roster in general, I think this is the year. And a lot of them have a little bit of postseason experience. They actually won a playoff series in 2020. And I think that they are poised this year after a down year, but they bring in some more veteran leadership, right? Unfortunately, lose Marte. But again, this is a roster that is very deep and does not have a lot of holes. And I think a lot of these arms are going to become now level pitchers for the Marlins. So I like the Marlins a lot. I don't know if they're a playoff team, but I think they will make some noise this year. One team that I do not like, one team that is overvalued, and I'm going to preface this with saying the Padres are not on this list. And they're not on this list because I talked about them at length last show when I ripped them for firing Jace Tingler. You can go back and look at that. I'm going to try to post that clip by itself. So you guys can check that out. But I absolutely shredded the Padres for firing Jace Tingler and amongst other things. And so they are certainly a team that I have as one of my overrated teams, but I don't include them on this list because I've already talked about them. And so you can check that out, and we'll certainly talk about Padres down the road. But another team besides the Padres that I think is overvalued is the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, I don't really have necessarily specific evidence for this. But to me, the Rays, and I've said this every year, and I've been proven wrong for like the last 3 years about the Rays. I've said probably 2 years, I would say, I said that they were going to have a drastic decline, and they did not. Now, here are the things I don't like about the Rays. They do not make contact with the baseball. They do not do that. So, as you know, if you've seen small ball, and again, a lot of you might not have seen too much of it already, but if you've seen probably any episode of small ball, you know how much I value putting the ball in play and making contact. It is not a coincidence that this show is called Small Ball. I will just leave it at that. And the Rays do not do very much of that. They led the league in strikeouts in 2021. And they also led the league in strikeouts in 2020. That is not a good trend. And unfortunately for me, they have still had some success despite that. Now, another thing that I don't like is their defensive catcher, who is Mike Zunino. Now, another large piece of the puzzle that is a baseball team that I find to be drastically important, more so than most people, is the defensive abilities of your catcher. And Mike Zunino, to me, is the worst defensive catcher in the league. Yes, he's honestly worse than Gary Sanchez, and you know how I feel about that. We will get into more on that another time. I do not like what Mike Zunino does behind the plate. Now, the exception to that is he is very, very good at managing. Well, I don't know if very, very good. That is definitely a stretch, but he is adequate at managing a pitching staff, and he is very, very good compared to the other elements of his defense. But that is the one thing that I need to give him credit for. Now, the Rays have been losing some of these arms, the likes of a Blake Snell, a Charlie Morton, that made them the type of team that they were when they were having all of that success. They've lost a couple of those guys. Offensively, now they have young players who you would think would improve, but I don't think that these young players, let's say, for example, Brandon Lau, Austin Meadows, those kind of guys, I'm not including Wander Franco in that list, but those sort of guys do not profile to me as the type of guys who will improve, right? Baseball fans have a nasty habit of assuming if you're a young player who does well, you are going to improve. That's not the case. And a lot of people think it's kind of random. I don't mean random literally, but unpredictable who is going to improve and who isn't. Well, if you've watched small ball, you might have a bit of an idea how you would go about figuring that out. And one of the ways you can figure that out is by analyzing their, and this is for hitters specifically, the effort in their swing. And I know this is a very specific nuance, but it is an important one. These high swing and miss kind of guys, the likes of a Brandon Lau, for instance, they are able to have success early because there is not a lot of tape or research about them. But when pitchers start to have that tape, right, and that research, for lack of a better word, hitters need to make adjustments, right? Hitters in year 2, year 3, year 4 are going to need to make adjustments because pitchers now know how to pitch to them. And the hitters that are swing and miss kind of guys with high effort swings have a much more difficult time making those adjustments. Every young hitter is going to have to do it, right? I'm not saying that when pitchers figure you out, that is a definitive moment in which you will start to decline, because some hitters have the capabilities of making those adjustments. Okay. Those types of guys, don't mean to pick on him too much, but like a Gary Sanchez, for example, aren't capable of doing that because of the effort and energy in their swing. And if they were to make adjustments, they would have to sacrifice power, which they are not willing to do because of the analytic narrative that we are faced with in the game of baseball. Of course, more on that later. Anyway, the Rays, I think this is the year that it catches up to them. I also do not like Kevin Cash as a manager. I don't mean to pick on him either. But when we talk managers, which we will at greater length another time, I will get more specific about that. I think this is the year the Rays, lack of contact, lack of defense. Oh, that's another thing. They are, over the last couple of years, have been the worst team defensively in Major League Baseball, in my opinion. And I think, I mean, I haven't really looked at it, but very well could be coming into 2022. Very, very overrated defensively. I do like Wander Franco, and more on that later. I think that he's going to be, at least in the beginning, very productive. And I do think he will have a good career, but more on that later. The Rays, I think this is the year all that catches up to them. And I think they're going to take a slide and probably even miss the playoffs. But again, more on that later. Another team that I like to be sort of a undervalued team is the Milwaukee Brewers, and they are valued pretty highly. I mean, they made the playoffs last year. I picked them to win the World Series last year coming into the postseason, and I think that they are drastically undervalued. Now, Omar Narvaez behind the plate is very underrated and very good at managing a pitching staff. Okay. And what's interesting about the Brewers, right? They were a very good team last year at the deadline when they before the deadline when they then added Eduardo Escobar and the this roster to me, and I didn't really factor this in when I was making my World Series pick. It was a very good roster on paper. But the problem last year for the Brewers in the postseason was they weren't ready to really gel yet, right? They weren't really clicking. They didn't find their groove as a team yet with all the new pieces. And I think now with the offseason, of course, and just another year under their belt, I think now a guy like Eduardo Escobar is really going to start to fit in nicely. And I think Narvaez, now that he is the full-time starting catcher and is seen as that type of a guy, sort of, I would think a star, but others may disagree. But regardless, the full-time catcher, I think he's going to be able to just gel much more easily with the pitching staff and with the coaching staff. And I think this Brewers team has been sort of pieced together over the last couple of years. And despite having a lot of talent in 2021, I didn't really account for the fact that they weren't really ready as a team yet to gel right in the right way. And I think now in 2022, we will see that from them. And I think they are a really scary team in the NL. And I expect them to exceed expectations. Another team. So, okay. Another team that I do not like. Now, it's. I'm trying to figure out how to. Okay. So, the San Francisco Giants, right? Last year was bizarre. Okay. So, I picked them in 2020 to be the worst team in Major League Baseball coming into the season. They then went on this incredible run, almost even made the playoffs. And then in 2021, they won over 100 games, which was preposterous to me. Here's the thing about the Giants. 2 words. Buster Posey. Okay. He's gone. That is going to change this franchise dramatically. And let me tell you why. Okay. I'm sorry that I'm rambling, but this is I'm trying to figure out the right way to word this. The impact of a catcher, of a generational defensive catcher, is so much more important than you people. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but a lot of you people give it credit for. And when Kevin Gausman came into that organization from being like a high 4s, low 5s ERA kind of guy, and all of a sudden was a Cy Young candidate, everybody was shocked. And everybody was like, wow, is Kevin Gausman, has he reinvented himself? Is this, the new, is this a new perennial Cy Young candidate? No, it's because he now has Buster Posey. And we've seen this for years on the Cardinals where random below average to mediocre pitchers come into that organization, are now throwing to Yadier Molina and become Cy Young level candidates like a Jack Flaherty. I mean, not exactly following that path, but a lot of those young arms as well, right? Succeeding early because they have that support from Yadi, and Buster Posey, in much the same way, is doing a lot of the same things. Now, they lose Gausman and they lose Posey. Are they going to win 100 games next year? Absolutely not, in my opinion. Now, the NLOS in general is a lot worse than it was last year, and we'll get to more on that in a second. But and Gabe Kapler really proved me wrong. Right? I did not like the hire when they hired Gabe Kapler, and he really proved me wrong, but I still do have my doubts. And I think without the stability of Posey, because I think that was one of the things that allowed him to be so successful, right? He has that captain, veteran, Hall of Fame level catcher to help him with the leadership side of things, right? But now that Kapler is without Posey, Crawford's getting older. I don't know. I mean, of course, he is there, certainly, and had a tremendous season last year. This team is aging. This team has lost some of its veteran leadership type guys, like a Hunter Pence, like a Buster Posey now. I don't see it with the Giants, right? And I do think they are better than I gave them credit for, certainly. But are they going to win 100 games? No. And I think losing Posey will really hurt them. And where it will really, really, really hurt them, I think, is in the pitching side of things. And they have a lot of young arms who are unproven, like a Logan Webb, for example. Not taking anything away from Logan Webb, but if he's not throwing to Buster Posey, and I don't even know what they have, is it Tyler Heineman? I don't know. What are these guys going to look like? And I don't know if Gabe Kapler is the right guy to manage that situation. So I think the Giants are going to not quite live up to those expectations. And finally, the third team that I really like this year, and this is my dark horse playoff team, and I think I project them to come out of nowhere, is the Kansas City Royals. Okay, bear with me for a second. Now, on paper, you might have your questions about the Kansas City Royals, especially on the mound, right? They have a bunch of, I don't want to say nobodies because that sounds a little disrespectful, but a bunch of very unproven arms, both in the starting rotation and in the bullpen. Here's the thing, though, and this is becoming a trend I'm noticing with this segment here. Salvador Perez is behind the plate. And who do you want when you have young arms who are unproven? A veteran, elite, Hall of Fame level defensive catcher like a Salvador Perez. He also had a tremendous season offensively. And the Royals offensively have, at just about every position, a very hyper-talented young player who I think a lot of them are ready to blossom. I'm sorry, my computer is freaking out and I need to... There we go. The likes of a Kyle Isbell, right? Look out for Nicky Lopez this year. I really think he could have an outstanding season. I think he could hit over 300. Andrew Benintendi, right? We haven't seen him really blossom yet into what we thought he could be. Maybe this is the year that he does that. I think this team, Ryan O'Hearn, right? Especially against right-handed pitching. They are balanced, they have power, and they also have contact. They have a great mix of both, and I love that. I love when teams don't necessarily have a identity, right, in the way that a lot of like NFL teams or NHL teams or whatever the case may be. A lot of teams like to have an identity where they do one thing really well. I like to see these kind of teams that can put the ball in play and hit it over the fence and run the bases well. They are one of the fastest teams in the league, and they have been for years. And of course, let's not forget about Whit Merrifield, who to me is a top 10 player in the game of baseball, and I think is ready to take on that leadership role and lead this team into the postseason. Now, they will have to add pitching at the deadline or even in free agency if they can. And of course, it's a small market, but they have won the World Series in the last 10 years, so we know the blueprint is there. I really like the Kansas City Royals this year. Is it lofty to put them in the playoff conversation? Maybe, but I'm willing to take that risk, and I think that they will shock the world in 2022. The third team that I think is overvalued, this one seems fairly obvious to me, is the Texas Rangers. Now, they, of course, add, it's been talked about at length, the $500 million guys in Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. And you guys, if you've seen my show before, know how much I love Marcus Semien. However, Corey Seager, on the other hand, over the course of his career has been a very talented player. And the quarrels that I've had with him is that, and I don't want to necessarily say this definitively because it might be unfair, but is he ready to take on a leadership role in Texas? Because that's what he's going to have to do. They now see him as the face of this franchise, I would think. And I don't know if he's ready intangibly to do that yet. The other question that I have is who's behind the plate? Is it Jose Trevino? I don't even know. They're obviously going to have to pick someone up. I don't know if Sam Huff, their catching prospect, is ready. I don't think he is. He appears not to be. He's struggling to make contact against minor league pitchers. Who's behind the plate? And that's going to be a big question mark for them, with especially a lot of young arms in the bullpen that I think need sort of that stability behind the plate, and they have not found a guy. The Rangers have not had stability behind the plate really since Pudge, which was a long time ago. And I don't know who's catching. I don't know how these two new pieces are going to fit in, and not just on the field, but in the locker room, right? And that's not to say anything negatively about Corey Seager, for example, in terms of his leadership qualities. But I just don't know. I just don't see it yet. And I don't think that people are factoring that in necessarily. And I think it's very easy to see the kind of money that they're throwing out right now and correlate that with future success. But I think we have to dig a little deeper and ask ourselves, is that really how this is going to play out? And I don't know if it is. In Texas, especially in a division with a lot of pretty good teams. And I think that the Angels are poised for a strong season. I mean, I know you guys hate for me to say this, but I think the Astros are still going to hang around and be pretty good. So, and of course, the Mariners are looking like the best they've been in quite some time. So, I don't necessarily see it in Texas, but I could be wrong. So, those are my three. Again, just to recap, the three teams I like this year: the Royals, I like the Marlins, and I like the Brewers as my three undervalued teams. And my three overvalued teams, the Rangers, the Giants, and the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, here's what we're going to do to close out the show. We're going to do one of those top fives. Yeah, I've become sort of famous for my top fives, right? And it's the New Year's, right? And one of the biggest and most popular New Year's traditions is New Year's resolutions. And what a lot of sports talk shows do around this time is they throw out their New Year's resolution for players, teams, coaches, what have you. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do 5 New Year's resolutions for the fans of the game of baseball. Now, I do not pretend to be some legendary baseball mind that is above all of the other fans and what have you. But from my perspective, these are 5 things that I think the general masses could do better. And again, take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. This is my opinion. I am no guru of the game, and you might not necessarily agree with anything about what I have to say. With that said, I know for a fact that I am going to get ripped for a lot of these topics, and that's just kind of how this show works. I think I have established myself as somebody who says a lot of controversial things when it comes to the game of baseball, and that is okay with me. So here we go, 5 New Year's resolutions for the fans, things that I think they should think a little bit differently about in 2022. And again, look, okay. Again, I've said a lot of things on this show in the past that I've gotten some slack for. And I know a lot of these, couple of them in particular, are not going to sit well with a lot of you. But anyway, here we go. Number 1, please stop blaming the owners for this lockout. Please. And again, I know a lot of you don't want to hear this, but Major League Baseball is a business, okay? It is first of all, what really is perplexing to me is so I know a lot of you guys always tend to side with the players, right? Because the owners are kind of these millionaires, billionaires that kind of have all of the power. And when you have all that power, it's very easy to, come across as power hungry or whatever the case may be in the public eye, right? But the thing about it to me is like, and a lot of people have said this, the people who are really hurting from this lockout are the fans, of course, right? Because the players are still getting paid a lot, historically speaking, not in this current moment, and the owners are, of course, as well. And the people who are hurting are the fans. Now, the reason why, to me, again, this is my opinion, the players are, first of all, let's just think about this on like a life scale for a second. The players have become, in a lot of cases, generationally wealthy because they are able to hit a round object with a piece of wood. I mean, let's face that for a second, right? This is a collection of human beings who, again, are given this opportunity to become celebrities in many cases and create wealth for their families for the simple fact that they can throw and hit a baseball well. And there's nothing wrong with that, certainly. But to me, to see them as the victims in this situation, and I'm not siding with the owners, I think both cases certainly need to figure it out and come to an agreement. But I don't know why we all jump to the conclusion that the owners are taking advantage of these players and what have you. And I don't know. I don't. I can't pick a side because I think either way, I'm on both sides. I'm not on neither side. I'm on both sides. I think both sides certainly, and I don't know the ins and outs of all the negotiations, but I don't know why we would assume that either side is not being fair. I'm sure they both have good reasons for their sides of the case, and I'm sure it's going to work itself out as it always does. And so I'm not too worried about it. I'm not, against the owners. I'm not against the players either. I think both sides need to do what they need to do to get what they want, and I think they will, and I think we'll all end up happy in a couple months. Number 2, please stop blaming Rob Manfred for every problem in the game of baseball. Okay. Do I like Rob Manfred? No, not really. Should they probably get a new commissioner? Yeah, probably. Has he done some pretty bad things as commissioner? Yeah. But this narrative that every problem in the game of baseball stems from him is ridiculous. Baseball has had a cultural issue for the last 10 to 15 years, which stems from the analytics movement, which I've talked about at length on this show. The product of the game of baseball is not what it once was. Okay, it is not as enjoyable to watch, and I think it's very difficult to argue otherwise. Number 2, the game of baseball and the fans and the baseball administration has strayed away from the game and is seeking marketing over the game itself. And that might not make sense, and I'll try to explain what I mean by that. There's this emphasis now on marketing the game, right? Marketing the players, right? Changing the game into something that is more aesthetically pleasing for the casual fan. And as we stray further and further away from what we all love, which is the game itself, it loses a lot of that passion, right? And a lot of that old school kind of excitement that I think a lot of us miss in the game of baseball, right? We're baseball right now is trying so hard, and the fans are as well, to change, to find, a way to compete with football and basketball. And that's not going to happen, right? It is in a lot of ways the same market, but it's a different market in a lot of other ways. And so I think the more we stray away from the focus on the game, right? Like 75% of the notifications that I get on my phone from MLB are about like a bat flip or a player's cleats or the new jersey that this team is coming out with, this weekend or what have you, right? We're not really talking about the game itself that much. And I think the fans are responsible for that in a lot of ways as well, right? The more we stray away from the game itself, I think the less excitement there is about it when, like, let's take the World Series, for example. The World Series didn't feel as exciting this year because the regular season it's not really novel, the postseason, because we're not even that much focused on the game itself, right? We're focused on sort of the marketability of the players and all that stuff, and that doesn't really get magnified in the postseason as much if we're not focused on the game itself. So that's sort of the cultural problems that I have with the game right now, and Rob Manfred is a part of that, but he's not responsible solely for it. And he's in a very difficult situation. He inherited a very difficult situation. Is he doing all the right things? No, not even close. But to blame him for all of the issues in the game is ridiculous. And I don't know. I mean, I don't really have a solution for that. But to me, I would stop being so hard on Rob Manfred. Number 3, let's change course a little bit. Okay. Please, if you would, start doing some more research on managers. They matter. I don't know how many times I have to tell you this. And what I mean by research is when people argue for or against managers, pretty much the only evidence anybody uses is like expected record versus real life actual record. And everybody thinks, well, okay, so the Giants, let's say, overperformed this year. Gabe Kapler must be a great manager, right? This, that, or the other team underperformed this year. This guy might be a terrible manager, right? Like the Padres underperformed this year. They fire Gabe Kapler. I don't need to talk more about that now. I spent about 20 minutes ripping them for that in my last show, and you guys can check that out. My point is that there's so much more to managing, and a lot of it we don't see. 90% of it probably we don't see, but the 10% that we can. And the things that I look for in a manager are, do they get their team ready to play and play their best, right? Does the manager get his team playing to their fullest potential? How do you see that? It's pretty difficult, but there are some ways, and we'll talk more about managers down the road. I don't want to get too caught up in the specifics right now. Another thing is the culture and the environment and the energy. Do they create that positive energy of leadership and excitement and all that? And then, of course, in-game decision-making is important as well. And obviously, that is more visible to us managing the pitching staff, creating runs in other ways than hitting the ball over the fence and all that kind of stuff. So to me, I think we should be focusing more on what these managers are doing, not so much the results of what ends up happening, but in advance of that, right? Going into the season, how is this guy? What is he doing in spring training? What is he saying in his press conferences? All that kind of stuff. And we're going to be talking a lot about managers going into the season, and I'll probably do, and I've been wanting to do this for a long time, my like full manager power rankings, because a lot of the manager stuff that I've done on the show, you guys have been very fond of, and I've gotten a lot of positive feedback for. Because when I started to do the manager stuff, I was worried that you guys were going to get bored with it, but you didn't. You guys, I've got a lot of positive feedback. So anyway, more about that later. But number 3, let's get more specific about how we're analyzing managers, and let's analyze them thoroughly because they matter. I know a lot of you don't believe that. I can't emphasize it enough. The manager is by far the most undervalued position on a team. Number 4. This is a weird one, but fans, stop worrying so much about injuries. And this might surprise you because the brand that I've built for myself on the show is certainly an old school mindset kind of guy. But this is one new school thing that I can side with here. In a 162 game season, and Yankee fans in particular are very guilty of this. Anytime somebody gets hurt, lands on the DL with like a minor injury or whatever the case may be, fans come out and they start talking about how these guys are brittle, they don't play through anything, yada, yada, yada. Now, their job as an organization and as players is to win baseball games. Actually, let me rephrase that, is to win championships, okay? That's what will make you, the fan, happy, I think, in most cases. And in a lot of cases, players sitting out in July or May or August or whatever the case may be is helping them accomplish that goal of winning a championship. So it's very easy to rip these guys and say, why can't he play through it? Why is this guy always getting hurt? Why is everyone on the team on the IL? Blah, 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 blah. But in reality, and I think in baseball in particular, in a lot of cases, it is the right decision, not only for the player himself, but the team at large, to take some time off, to not let these injuries manifest and expound upon themselves and build into something that they don't need to. It's a long season, and there are a lot of also stretches, and maybe teams need to be more aware of this, but a lot of stretches against maybe less than stellar teams that you can afford maybe to give some guys rest and try to get them over a nagging injury or whatever the case may be. So number 4, fans, When guys get hurt, don't freak out, okay? It happens. It's sports. In a lot of cases, 95% of them, they are doing what is right by sitting out to eventually accomplish the goal of winning a championship. That's number 4. Number 5, and this seems like a fitting way to end the show, because again, I hope a lot of you viewers here are new viewers of the show. If you are not a new viewer of the show, this will sound very familiar to you. But in case you are not too familiar with small ball, number 5, stop being so progressive, everybody. And that's kind of counter to what I just said. I'm starting to realize. But if you have ever seen an episode of small ball, you will probably know how I feel about the analytics movement, which is negatively. I think that the first team to flip the script on analytics and go all in on an old school strategy will build themselves a dynasty. I truly believe that. I don't know which team it's going to be. We can talk about that at greater length at another date. But fans, first of all, there's 2 sides to this. Number 1, and this is difficult to argue with. The second one is easy to argue against. But number 1, it's made the game a lot less fun to watch. So all of these fans that are advocating for a more progressive analytical game, I don't really know what your end goal is. Do you want this game to become a home run derby like it in many ways already has? Do you want this game to become wiffle ball in a lot of ways in which it already has? Probably not. Right, so it's hurting the product. But number 2, and this you could certainly argue with, but I've talked at length on this show for 2 years now about how I feel about building your team in that fashion. And in my opinion, teams that are built with a strong analytical base are not built to win in the postseason. And I'm not going to get into all the specifics of that right now. We don't have time for that specifically, but I certainly will. And I encourage you to look back. I'll try to post, I'm going to get to some of this more logistical stuff in a second, but I'll try to post more individual clips of specific topics so you people can go look at that. But number 5, stop with the analytics, okay? They have their place in the game, certainly, and stats or whatever you can take them for what they're worth. But I really think, for the sake of the game, but more specifically, fans, when you're evaluating players, right, dig deeper, okay? See what they're doing on and off the field. See what they're doing, catchers, for example, with the pitching staff. See what these managers are doing, not only with their pitching staff, with their lineup, with their subs, with their all that, but what they're doing to the culture of the franchise. And in terms of the game itself, try to see what I'm getting at here. And again, we're going to talk at greater length about this at another time, but the way some of these teams, like I'll throw out the Phillies, for example. I'll throw out the Blue Jays, for example. Some of these teams, the Padres under Jace Tingler for the last 2 years, that create runs in ways, the Braves in a lot of ways, World Series champions, create runs in ways that are not just hitting the ball far. And in the postseason, that is a lot more effective. And again, it's hard for me to say this without going down that whole path in my entire argument, but we don't have time for that right now. So I'll just leave it at that for now. And I'm not going to give you my specific evidence at this moment. But number 5, stop with the 100% all-in focus on analytics and exit velocity and hitting the ball far and things of that nature. So to recap, 5 New Year's resolutions for baseball fans. Number 1, stop blaming the owners for this lockout. Again, you don't have to blame the players, but I think both sides have a pretty valid argument. I don't know what the specifics of the negotiations are, and nor do you. So I don't know why you're so apt to. I mean, I do know why, but I wouldn't be so apt to jump on the owners for this. Number 2, stop blaming Rob Manfred for every single problem in Major League Baseball. Would I look for a new commissioner? Absolutely, but it is certainly deeper than that. Number 3 is, I don't remember number 3. Number 4, we'll get back to that in a second. Number 4 is stop worrying about all these guys getting hurt. It happens, right? And what have you. Number 5, the analytics movement is taking over. Let's stop straying so far away from small ball, no pun intended. And again, it's not a coincidence that this show is called Small Ball, right? I mean, I've said that a couple times, but I think you can kind of see sort of the brand I'm building for myself on this show. And number 3, I don't remember number 3, but I'm sure you do, and obviously that is unfortunate. But no need to waste time trying to come up with that one, because I probably talked about it for about 5 minutes anyway, at least, so you know my thoughts. Anyway, I'm gonna close the show with some logistical stuff as well. I know I've said many times that I want to create sort of a structured schedule for the show, and I do. I don't know what that's going to be yet, but I'm going to try to come up with that soon and let you know. We have some exciting things on the horizon for small ball in year 3. One of them being a potential partnership with another. So I've done the show for 2 years by myself. We are looking potentially, and we have a potential co-host that could be joining me at some point in one way or another. And I'm not going to get too specific about that yet because nothing is finalized, but we have potentially the show will morph into a dual hosted show. And that could look, it varies how that may look, whether it's, an every show kind of thing, or we kind of bring him on every once in a while. We'll see. But just want to throw that out there. And in that same vein, not just that, but in general, we will be looking to have a lot of guests on the show. I started doing guests, bringing on guests and callers and things of that nature during COVID, when COVID first started, because the season was not happening and we kind of ran out of stuff to talk about. So I started bringing on guests. That was a lot of fun. You guys loved that. Another thing that we're going to do a lot more of, especially during this lockout where there's, again, not that much to talk about, is those trivia games that we used to do during COVID. We've kind of haven't done those in a while, but those got a lot of positive feedback as well. So, excuse me, we will be doing a lot more trivia games. We'll be having a lot of guests on the show, especially leading up to the regular season. And finally, two more things, actually. One thing is coming into the season, and this is kind of a ways to go, so we'll talk about this more, in a bit. But I have this bet with a friend of mine, and essentially so he is a very analytical guy, and I'm obviously not. And we are coming together, joining forces, and we are trying to see which one of us can predict the season better. And he is going to be using nothing but hard stats, and I am not allowed to use a single statistical metric to make my predictions. More on the specifics of that later. But I am going to feature that bet on this show, and in some way or another, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this yet, I'm going to make it an interactive thing with you guys where you guys can give your predictions as well, and we can sort of come up with maybe sort of a standings type thing, or a prize system of so we can kind of follow the season like as it's going, right, in a very interactive way. And interactive is a word that I've used on the show many times. I think it just makes the show a lot better. And when you guys can come on or just share your opinions or whatever the case, I think that makes for a lively discussion. So that as well. And then finally, I've said this many times, and I've finally figured out a good way of doing it. So I'm confident that I can bring this to life. I'm going to try to post, because when I do these streams, right, the recording goes up automatically afterwards. So obviously a lot of you guys can't watch the stream live, but you can watch it after the fact as the recording. But it's just the full hour-long clip or half hour, or however long the show is. What I really want to do is pull out individual segments, like the highlights of the show and the more interesting topics, I think, and just post like a 5-minute or 10-minute clip of the most important or most interesting parts of the show, so that you can watch those for 5 minutes if you don't have the time to sit down and watch the whole show. And then hopefully I would hope that you, when you do have time, would go back and watch the whole show. But maybe you're on the bus and you want to just for a 5-minute, or you're pouring cereal and you want to just 5 minutes, whatever the case, um, I'm going to try to post, like I said, individual clips of topics, if that makes sense. And I'm going to try to throw those on the Small Ball Instagram page as well, just to have another outlet for that, and another platform for that. So be on the lookout for that. I'm going to try to, I'm not that tech savvy. I'm sure you guys know this by now. But you guys, I mean, I'm sure you can see from the thumbnail of this stream, it looks pretty nice. I think I did a pretty good job. We are getting a little more tech savvy on the show. So hopefully we can kind of get that rolling, soon. And that is something that's been requested of me for a very long time, is those individual clips, because people have said, like, I don't necessarily have time to sit down and watch the whole show, and I'd really like to see like those individual. You guys kind of get where I'm going. I don't think I need to talk too much more about that. Anyway, that is pretty much going to wrap up today's show. Again, I want to thank you for the support over the last 2 years. This is year 3 now of Small Ball. We're almost 2 years to the day of when we started the show, and we've come a long way, and I'm excited for 2022. Again, 2021 was a terrible year in terms of Small Ball. I'm very disappointed in the product that I put out, following a really strong 2020. So I apologize for that, and I expect and I'm confident that I can make 2022 much better. Again, part of that will be a consistent schedule that I will try to come up with, and devise soon, so that I can tell you what that is and we can follow that. I think it makes it so much more accessible for you guys when you know when the shows are going to be and what have you, for obvious reasons. So again, thank you so much, for viewing the show today, or if you're watching this after the fact, whatever the case, and in general for the support over the last couple of years. Next show, today is Friday. My best guess, it's quite possible we have a show tomorrow. And a lot of times doing the show in back-to-back days is difficult. Because, to be honest, my voice, especially when I do like a full hour-long show, my voice gets a little bit hoarse the next day. But I can't imagine that would be like a consistent problem. So it's very possible that we do a show tomorrow. I do have a lot of stuff to talk about. I made my full way too early power rankings for the 2022 season. I have them all ranked out 1 to 30, and of course they're subject to change. We haven't even really had free agency yet. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to list those for you on Small Ball. Probably will go, I don't know if we'll go like 5 at a time. Maybe we'll do 10 at a time. We certainly won't do all 30 in one show. We'll break it up, and over the course of however many shows it is, I'll give you my power rankings. We have a lot more of the fun sort of segments, like the top 10s and the top 5s and all that kind of stuff. I may even do like a top 10 or top 20 players coming into 2022. A lot of you have requested that, and have asked me about, just hardcore, no nonsense, who are the best players in the game. So I'll probably do something along those lines at some point. We will be doing a lot of manager stuff. I've done a lot of manager stuff in the past, and again, you guys seem to really enjoy it. So I might do like a full 1 to 30, my manager power rankings. I don't know. A lot of opportunities for topics here on Small Ball. And while the lockout is still going on, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of time that we need to fill with not a lot of necessarily current baseball things going on that we can address. So I have a lot of stuff planned. I'm really excited. I hope you guys are excited too. And I think it's going to be a really good year on Small Ball. I'm excited for the season as well. And again, can't really say it enough, but thanks so much for the support over the last 2 years. It's been a really cool. And I also encourage you to look back on some of the previous streams, like if you just want to, because it's kind of like interesting to see the record of stuff that we've built on Small Ball and all of the different topics we've talked about, and the way the show has kind of progressed in that way. So it's been a really great experience over the last 2 years, and I'm excited for what's to come. Thank you so much for watching today. Have a healthy, happy, and safe weekend. I don't know when we'll be back. It's possible tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then maybe Sunday, but I'll try to notify you guys on the Instagram thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, all that great stuff. I mean, you guys obviously know what to do, and recommend to anyone you think would enjoy the show. That's going to do it for today. Thanks again so much for tuning in. Peace.